Have a seat, please. For those who do not know who you are, could you give not the LinkedIn version of your bio, but maybe the Twitter version of your bio, if you have one?
Should I start?
Go for it.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm Renata Pollini, the head of nature at Holcim. I'm originally from Brazil, biologist, but I did my master in Switzerland. I live in Switzerland since 2007, so really long ago. And before joining Holcim, I worked in the agricultural sector, always in sustainability for 10 years.
And for those who are outside of Switzerland, Holcim is construction, cement, correct?
So yes, we are in the construction materials sector. We produce cement, aggregates, and roofing, facades, many materials that are going to be used in the construction.
Excellent. Usually when I think construction, I don't think sustainability, so I'm so excited about this. And for you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to be here. So I'm a sustainability consultant at Quantis. We work with various different sectors and various different companies at Quantis, but my focus is more on the food and agriculture sector. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, but I've been living in Switzerland now for a little over 12 years.
Excellent. I'm going to start with you. We've heard earlier today, should it be a bottom-up strategy? Should it be a top-down strategy? We've also have other people saying, actually, everybody's got to do their part. Young, old, individuals, big companies. When we think about targets and ownership of responsibility, what is your take? Are corporates still in the business of greenwashing? Are they honestly, genuinely taking the right steps forward? Do you feel there's sufficient adoption? Do you think it's not good enough? What are some of your thoughts if you just look at the landscape?
So, I think it's safe to say that we're not doing enough. We collectively, I'm not pointing the finger at companies, but I'm talking about at the individual level, the collective level, the government level, company level, we're not doing enough. There are a lot of barriers. It doesn't mean that companies are not trying. So the two main frameworks that companies are interested now are TNFD and SBTN. We talked about TNFD a little bit earlier today, this afternoon. So that's the Task Force on Nature-Related Finance Disclosure. To put it quite simply, it's looking at impacts and dependencies at more a high level. So I just want to highlight dependencies also. So a food company has an impact on soil or water, but also depends on soil or water. So it's this double materiality. So the TNFD is more the disclosure part, I would say, the reporting and disclosure. And then we have the science-based targets for nature. So you've probably heard of science-based targets for climate. Science-based targets for nature is the equivalent, but for nature, it is more complex. There's not just one indicator like greenhouse gas emissions. There are several different factors related to nature. And what SBTN tries to do is, it's more the heavy lifting, I would say, if we compare it to TNFD. And what companies try to do through SBTN is really measure their impacts, because they cannot track change and report on change if they can't measure their impacts.
So you're obviously familiar with both of these, and I'm very curious because we already have some comments about Holcim. And I guess up to now, what has been any construction company, any mass producer cements, I guess, their impact on nature. And yet here you are in the role that you are in. Can you share a little bit about what Holcim is doing when it comes to these topics?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I joined the company 2020 in November, and my main task was to develop the nature strategy for the group.
Yes.
Head of Nature is quite an interesting title if you think about other companies. I don't think many have a person that's in charge of nature, and Holcim is one of these companies. So basically, I developed this strategy together with the team, the countries, and so on and so forth. But we are very, very bold because with the strategy, we are focusing mainly two elements of nature. One is fresh water, and the other one is biodiversity. And we have established measurable targets for these two elements. For water, we are focusing 3 main categories.
It's just a bit of beatboxing, just keep you awake. Yeah. We'll switch to this. That could be your mic.
No.
Here we go.
Okay. Now, yes, great. So on water, we are focused on mainly 3 categories. One is about reduction of freshwater withdrawal, and we have measurable commitments for cement, aggregates, and ready-mix concrete, basically our main material business segments. I don't go into details because we don't have the time, but we have like targets, 33%, 20%, 15% reduction. And then we have another category that's about water quality. We want to ensure that the water we are discharging is in according to the in-country regulations, but also with our standards in the countries that do not have water quality, high water quality standards. We do have a standard, Holcim standard, they need to follow the countries. And the third one is about replenishment. There we are saying that 75% of our sites that are located in water risk areas, they need to be water positive by 2030. This means that if they cannot reduce to 0 their freshwater withdrawal, they need to give back this water for the nature and communities by, for example, restoring nature areas or by reforesting areas, always outside the boundary, never in our sites. And so this is for the water. On biodiversity, we have a commitment to, we want to have a measurable positive impact on biodiversity by 2030. Mm-hmm. We are using a methodology that was developed together with IUCN, so I was pleased to see Thomas speaking up here. So basically, Holcim and IUCN, we were partners for more than 10 years, some years ago, and together we developed this methodology, which is, the name is BIRS, Biodiversity Indicator and Reporting System. Is really tailor-made for the sector, for aggregates and cement, and really it measures biodiversity inside. So today we are measuring the biodiversity baseline, and by 2024 we want to have the baseline, and by 2030 we are going to measure again using the same methodology, and the idea is to have a higher value, have a higher index to show that we are in the positive trend. But it's fair to say that when we developed this, was into 2021, there was no SBTN, there was no TNFD. We knew these things were coming, so we said we need to be part of it to make sure we are agile enough to be flexible with our targets and commitments, or even to develop new targets and commitments.
Excellent. Thank you for answering that. We have a next question that's come in. Can you take us through an imaginary balance sheet? Where would nature as an asset on a company balance sheet arise? And can you give a concrete example?
Do you want me to take a stab? Or
Start and I can complement.
That's a tough question. As I mentioned earlier, companies have impacts and dependencies, and they're really starting to see how they rely on nature for their operations, also through their supply chain. So they're really starting to see the risk that's related to that. I would say that we're still at the early stages in terms of being able to quantify that risk and be able to really integrate it into the balance sheet the way we would in a more traditional way for other indicators. But we're starting to see that. That's kind of an incomplete answer for now. I don't know if you want to complete.
No, I fully agree. I think we are starting is a journey. I think you guys all know where climate is today. Nature, we are catching up. We now have the TNFD, which is a cousin of the TCFD. We have the SBTN, which is a cousin of the SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative. Now, end of the year in December, there was the agreement on the Global Biodiversity Framework for the countries. They agreed on 23 targets by 2030, like the Paris Agreement. So this was basically the Paris Agreement for nature, for biodiversity. So I think we are catching up, but we are not there yet. I'm more optimistic. So I always think that it should be on the positive side. Nature, we have to quantify the negative impacts, but also impacts can be either negative but also positive. So I think the positive are also something we should take in account.
And one final question and a final word on this. What strategy, maybe a practical one, would you use to convince companies to put metrics on their biodiversity impact? So besides the pointing ahead of nature, which I think every company should do, what are some other practical strategies?
So the SBTN was the first official guidance. So there was an initial guidance that has been out since 2020, but the first guidance came out last week. And I really think that's going to accelerate businesses to start applying SBTN It's evolving. It's not perfect, but it's a really good start. I think I do want to highlight one mistake that I think companies make is that they focus on climate, and sometimes they're just already overwhelmed by what they have to do for climate in terms of reporting and setting targets and putting in climate strategies and roadmaps. But I do think it's a really big mistake to not integrate nature into your climate strategy, because there are trade-offs, and we do see sometimes actions in terms of reducing climate may have an impact on nature, and companies need to be aware of this risk.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yes, I fully agree. I'm pleased to say that SBTN launched their methodology 7 days ago, and they select 17 countries to 17 companies to pilot the methodology. Holcim is one of the companies that they select. So we are working this year, next year with SBTN to make sure we validate our targets as SBTN, but also maybe include new targets in our strategy. I think that's an important aspect, this about including nature into climate. At Holcim, one of my main challenges is to ensure that nature is in the highest agenda of the executive committees. But in terms of companies, my main point is use incentives. Try to include sustainability incentives to the into the senior leaders bonus. At Holcim, we manage that for water. So basically, our targets on water are included. It's part of the bonus of the senior executives. So the 200 most senior people in the company, they have bonus related to water, climate and circular economy. Hopefully in the future I would be able to include also biodiversity into it. It's what I'm aiming for. But I think incentives, companies, they, it's business. So they want to have the incentives bonus related to some sort of economy reward. So if you put nature into the incentives, I think that would help a lot.
Excellent. Can we get up for Lindsay and Renata, please? Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. I'll take that mic.